Well, Jim, the last few weeks on the Drive-Thru, we have reviewed the previous night, as of recording time, the previous night's episode of A&E's Biography, the joint venture with WWE and A&E. And last night on the show, Booker T. Did you have time to check this out?
I did. I certainly did. Apparently you didn't last night, but you did later on this morning. Yes.
You want me to respond to that? Yes.
Yeah,
I did not watch it live on Sunday night. I DVR'd it. I also didn't fall asleep in the middle of it, like some people who...
Okay. Hey, I only had to watch the last 30 minutes of it the next day. You had to watch the whole thing. But anyway, hey, this, at first, I must admit, the opening with the Shaft homage hooked me. Because he wanted to be John Shaft, Richard Roundtree. And by the end of the thing, I was looking forward to seeing the Richard Roundtree biography. No, I'm kidding. This was more of a biography of a guy that happened to be a wrestler rather than a big name wrestler as they've done the past few weeks. I'm not saying Booker's not a big name, but remember we said on the Steve Austin biography, with 5 minutes in, he was getting in the wrestling business. And our problem with, the Savage and the Piper biographies was that they didn't really go into any detail or as much detail as we would have liked about their formative years, territory days, etc. But they still were into, the wrestling business fairly quickly. This was 30 minutes in before Booker went to wrestling school or even heard about wrestling. I think the director figured this guy's story outside the ring, maybe, and redemption of, coming from such a deprived background, troubled childhood, lost his mother early, etc., and now has made something of himself in his profession, but also has a happy family and happy life and blah, blah, blah. That's the majority of the show. The wrestling part was kind of, what he does for a living. It wasn't as... I'm not saying, I don't even know whether this is good or bad. If you didn't know anything about wrestling, you'd probably like this show better than most that they've done. But for the wrestling fan, I mean, it was like he was in Global for a short time. He went to WCW. He went to the WWF, became the king, ruled the world. TNA never happened. And we don't even know whether he's retired or not now because they never actually said. So what did you think? I don't know.
Yeah, you bring up TNA. I kind of expected a mention when there was at one point a part where Charmelle was talking about Booker wanting to spend more time at home with her and the kids. And I'm thinking, oh, now they'll bring up him going to TNA and getting a lot of money so he can spend more time at home with Charmelle and the kids. And they never even talked about it. I thought it was good. To your point, and something we talked about after the Randy Savage one and the negative feedback from some people about it allegedly being a hit piece. But each one of these is directed by a different filmmaker.
Right.
And there really is a different feeling to each one of these. The Randy Savage one, before they had a wrestling legend, they would show like the little figure of the person.
Yeah.
That wasn't in any of the other ones of the series. Like there's no uniform feel of the series. It's kind of like ESPN 30 for 30 where they let a filmmaker just run with a topic.
So maybe Savage just got the short end of the stick on the filmmakers. But yeah, and I think that's what I think. This guy clearly thought the overall story of Booker's life. And I wonder, since this is, here's another thing. Booker's only been two places. Well, two places they're going to acknowledge, WCW and WWF and, and TNA that they didn't want to mention. So they couldn't really, it wasn't like Piper where, he had so many places that he went and he was in the business so long, et cetera, et cetera. You couldn't go back to the territories. So maybe the fans, the WWF fan or WWE fans will like this presentation better because they've seen tons of wrestling specials about Booker T, right? But they haven't seen his personal life. And I didn't even know that his childhood was so miserable, but boy, his old neighborhood looked, a tornado went through there last year and did $3 million worth of improvements. But, and his mother dying when he was 13, and then he's just an orphan and floating around. So I find it incredible that he was robbed Wendy's 20 different not the same Wendy's, but he robbed Wendy's restaurants 26 times before they got caught. Did you see that fucking?
Yeah.
I had heard he, robbed a Wendy's and went to prison when he was young. I didn't know he robbed Wendy's 26 times. But you got to admire, he's always applied himself, right? You got to admire his dedication. But as I said, about a half an hour in, then you hear Ivan Putski's wrestling school. And
how about that? Did you expect to see Ivan Putski?
Boy, no, I did not. Remember, we talked about, I met him for the first time ever in my life, like 3 or 4 years ago, up in the Northeast at an autograph deal. And I couldn't believe how tiny he was, because he's obviously, after he quit bodybuilding, and he's got to be, how old does he have to be now?
I would think early 80s at least, I would think.
Yeah. So he's lost a lot of his size and everything. And then that calls to, because he was always like 5'5", but when he weighed 290 or whatever, and he was a power lifter, it didn't seem like it. But now he's a very small old man.
Yeah, Wikipedia says he's 80, but then again, Wikipedia also says he's 5'10". So I don't know. I don't know about that.
Okay, so add 5 inches and add 10 years. But I like the old footage of G.I. Bro. You could see the potential that, Booker was bigger and in better shape and had more oomph and charisma than your average wrestling school student. So you can see that anybody that got him in any training class would see that. And Eddie Gilbert got a plug with the Global Wrestling Federation there when he and Stevie Ray became the Ebony Experience, which is actually where they first got on the radar of anybody at the time, was, the Ebony Experience in Dallas there. But what about the story of the Spinneroonie switching him babyface? They were ready to have a riot, and he did that Spinneroonie, and suddenly the people were loving him. I must call shenanigans on that. Do you remember the Global Wrestling Federation drawing any kind of house in the Dallas Sportatorium that if they'd have had a riot, the wrestlers wouldn't have them outnumbered?
I actually, sadly, regularly watched GWF on TV during this period of time. It was on 4 p.m. every day on ESPN. And it was awful. It was the worst show. It was pretty good when Eddie was there. And even before that, when Bill Eadie was booking, because you'd get excited, like, oh my God, here's Jim Cornette and Stan Lane. I haven't seen them on TV in a while, and here they are. And I'll never see them again on this show. But you don't know that, so you keep tuning in, thinking you'll see these stars return. Oh my God, there's Al Perez, there's the Lightning Kid. And you never see them again.
When Pedicino had that letter of credit for $30 million from the Nigerian, he got a lot more names than he did when they found out that it wasn't worth the paper that it was faxed on. But and they started doing their homegrown talent with like the Ebony Experience, because their budget was limited.
Well, that's the thing. The end of the Eddie Gilbert booking era, by that point it was all local guys. There were no more fly-ins. There was no more anyone coming from anywhere else. It was all just local Texas guys, and there was no one there. And very often, whenever there was any what we would call wrestling violence, a chair shot, just something minor even, they would just show a fan in the crowd. There was this one cowboy, I'll never forget him, just sleeping in the crowd. They just had to cut to any fan because they couldn't show violence on ESPN, I guess. But it was a bad show. But the people you saw that stood out, who had physiques usually, they stood out and you thought, like, wow, what are they doing here? Like the Ebony Experience. I hate to say this because the way things worked out, but certainly saw the promise there. But Ahmed Johnson, when he was Mo Adib, you saw him there, you're like, wow, look at this guy. I'm not a big JBL fan, but same thing. When you saw him there in his early days as John Hawk, it was like, wow, this guy, he reminds you a lot of some of the other Texas wrestlers you see. So there were guys that stood out, but then there was just all these local Texas guys, and nothing against them. They've been working there for years before GWF, and they would work there after GWF, but it wasn't doing it. It was a really bad show.
But okay, since you watched it, to my original comment, Spinneroonie didn't switch him babyface. they were presented first as heels, and then they switched babyface in some fashion, correct? Or did they ever switch babyface?
Now, again, the term spinneroonie was never used that I remember on GWF TV back then.
But that's the part
I don't remember that, though. I don't remember anything about him in the GWF doing the spinneroonie.
Well, they showed the footage of him doing it, but it's a breakdancing thing.
Right, but I don't remember that being like...
And it wasn't a trademark, but the way that they portrayed, the way that Booker portrayed it in the story he told, was that all these horrible rednecks and racists and old white people in the sportatorium, when they came out, were going to kill him. But then he did the spinneroonie, and it was like, oh, cool. And I was like, that's probably not that. And actually, as you mentioned, I'm not saying there weren't any old Texas rednecks in the sportatorium at that time, but most of them during the global days were asleep in the stands.
You know what else they left out? They talk about going to WCW and what a big opportunity that was. And I remember when they got there, they were certainly better than some of the other tag teams they had there, like the Cole Twins and the Kongs. I mean, there were some bad tag teams there at that time in 93. But what they left out was when they were originally brought in, they were brought back as Harlem Heat. I think the first time, which didn't air, weren't they Colonel Parker's like plantation workers? Like they were prisoners or whatever it was.
They were a chain gang.
That's right. That's what it was. That's what it was.
And Colonel Parker in the plantation owner outfit and the big hat was going to bring them out, and they were going to, yeah. And that
didn't work.
That didn't work
too well.
And then they went to Sister Sherry.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Ebony Experience became Harlem Heat after a brief stopover in a fucking chain gang in a southern prison. And by the way, it was good to see my old friend Doyle King on TV. Because he was the interviewer, Doyle King from Q102, Texas Best Rock.
Hey, let me ask you your impression, because when you saw various highlights throughout the thing of his career, he's such a star in WWE. And I'll admit, of all the guys that did comedy, he's one of the guys that did it better than others. Because he's funny. I mean, there's something about him that's funny, but I liked him in WCW when he was a badass. And they showed some footage there before he had the braids, when all of a sudden they were a good tag team, and then all of a sudden everyone started noticing Booker T. Like, wow, look at some of the things he's doing in there. He's really good. What'd you think of Booker T in WCW compared to the WWE version?
Well, that's we're headed that way, because you look at Harlem Heat as a team, and I know Booker and Stevie Ray's a very nice guy, and he kind of admitted, at one point in there, he said, I told, my brother, go for it if they want to feature you or whatever. Booker was the more accomplished in-ring performer and had, the outgoing personality and etc. But still, they were badasses. And then Booker T becomes a single, and he's a badass and a WCW champion, and he cuts the promos. And it just then all of a sudden, you see when he goes to the WWE after WCW's downfall, and all of a sudden he's having the fucking story. And of course, they made more money and got more ratings on this, but he's having a fight in a grocery store with Austin. And then they really did an in-depth segment in this program on the spinneroonie, and I wrote like they're stretching at this point. And he's the King Booker. He said he gets the British accent, and it was more, comedy / tomfoolery. And it also, when he was in TNA, the alternate dimension that they never actually acknowledged happening. One day he just started changing accents. And a lot of the guys were like wondering, what the fuck, is he just using our TV show to audition for other acting parts or whatever? Because he just started talking in different accents. And I guess he took the entertainment part of it and embraced it. But yeah, you can see where in the WWE, well, at that time, Goldberg, they finally brought Goldberg over and put him in a blonde wig. Everybody, I guess, that came to WWE from WCW felt like, well, we gotta get with the fucking program of doing silly stuff. And you can tell it's just a completely different presentation of almost everybody that changes. But hey, here's another thing, though. Speaking of heat, Sturgis, when they had the footage of Harlem Heat in the tag match.
Yeah. Against the Steiners.
Against the Steiners. Yes, it was written up at the time. I remember, oh boy, the fucking hottest heels on the whole show were Harlem Heat because of the audience and how what it consisted of and etc. But this was not like historic heat in the wrestling business. Nobody got cut or stabbed. No guns were pulled. Nobody, there was not a big riot with people throwing chairs in the ring, or was anybody even arrested. It was just the people really did not like Harlem Heat for obvious reasons, because it's a bunch of fucking bikers. But they just treated it like it was some history. They were almost on the verge of catastrophe there, and it was averted when all of the motorcyclists started revving up their motors. They never got out of that strong. You see what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
It was well, thank you for that incisive.
No, because they kept showing the clips, and I hadn't watched any of those Sturgis events in so many years. Boy, that crowd. That's all I'll say about that. Yeah. But they kind of made it like it was a big moment, and then they just moved on. I don't even remember it, to be honest with you. I didn't remember that event.
Well, I actually remember it was written up at the time that, boy, Harlem Heat was not at all popular with this crowd and et cetera, but there was no riot there or anything. And I loved the way that they basically got out of it with, we pissed them off so bad the whole place was revving their motors. Well, good. At least they weren't pulling out their fucking knives.
The other great part of that story is the idea the Steiners were scared.
Well, and they shouldn't have been, because they were the white guys. So unless they were figuring they were going to get run over on the way to all those bikers killing Harlem Heat, but I don't think they had anything to worry about. Plus there was 100,000 bikers and 2 Steiners. That was about even. But did you love the way that they tried in this biography program? They tried desperately to explain the inexplicable at the Bash of the Beach 2000 foolishness.
I was surprised by that, the fact they went down that road.
Well, the thing is, this was his first world championship win, and it was complete bullshit. Because they had fucked it all up with all of shit-stained shenanigans and all of Hogan's shenanigans beforehand, so it really illustrated to me as a wrestling booker and purist how bad they fucked Booker around on his first world championship win. They had to go through all of that manipulation first, and then he goes out and gets a big win. And I guarantee you, Booker T versus Jeff Jarrett had been a lot better than Hulk Hogan versus Jeff Jarrett. But just that they put themselves in that position where they had no control over their fucking amateur writer or their goddamn talent, that they couldn't just decide we're going to fucking elevate this guy and do it straight. But anyway, which that presaged WCW's downfall. Bash at the Beach, that was July. They were out of business the following March. And then at least they illustrated Booker T, unlike, and there's Nash sitting there. Of course, it's best for him. Yeah, I stayed out for 17 months and made a fortune. But Booker was one of the only guys that wanted to actually go and get over instead of sitting on his contract at that point.
I don't blame Nash for that, though, at all.
Well, no, because he ended up the next 2 times he got in the ring in the, 2 or 3 years after that, he tore something and went back on the injured list.
Yeah.
But of course, then there is, as we mentioned, Booker goes to the WWE, and then suddenly he's fighting with Steve Austin. Hey, big money there, but it's in a fucking grocery store. And they went in depth on the whole Spinneroonie thing, as I mentioned, and then they really the last 20 or 30 minutes. This was also his personal life again, his relationship with his son that he had when he was a teenager, and Charmelle. I love Charmelle. She was at OVW for a while.
Boy, I'll tell you, She is a good-looking woman.
Well, I'm glad you put all the emphasis on that. Yeah, she is. She's a former Miss something or other. I can't remember what it was. But no, she's fun. She's nice. She picked up on things quickly when she was training, but at the same time, I think she saw, well, this is probably, because she was actually training to wrestle for a while. They showed her as Queen Charmelle, but, I think she was probably like, I'll let Booker be the wrestler in the family, but she was really good at ringside. She got the fucking idea and could cut a halfway decent promo and etc. I always enjoyed working with her. And they did oh my God, who was it? She was, as Sister Charmelle, she was with Derek King and Jason Lee, the Suicide Blondes, because Derek was black and Jason was white, but they claimed that they were first cousins. So then Charmelle came in, so they made her Sister Charmelle. And there was a spot where she got into it with one of the other girls, and Charmelle was gonna grab the other girl, and the other girl was wearing a wig. I'm trying to remember who it was, but point is, Charmelle fucking reaches over and grabs the other girl by the hair like she's gonna jerk her down, and she jerks the wig off, and then she's got it in her fucking hand, and she does a triple take. Perfect, like a silent comedian. Looks at the wig and the head, the wig, the head, the wig, the head. It was fucking hilarious. Anyway, who was the schmo college professor that nobody's ever heard of in the wrestling business talking about making his comments on character development toward the end there?
I don't know.
There was a lot of talking heads in this one, too. It wasn't as egregious as last week, but...
and every episode, you need Bruce Pritchard in a different setting with a different look each time. But he has to be in all of these to spin the company line.
I was about to say, to provide the bridging narrative of how the company wants it presented moving forward. But it's amazing. He sounds just like that in talent meetings, too. It's when he's explaining to the guys how they shouldn't be upset about things they should be upset about. And we saw plenty of Booker with his kids and cooking in the kitchen and talking to some wrestlers in the back and his wrestling school and promotion. It was a motivational infomercial about to last 15 minutes. So yeah, on this one, I'm not saying it's bad. It gave you more of his personal life. Not as nearly as wrestling focused as the other ones. But there you have it.
Well, Jim, one of the things I think a lot of the listeners coming out of watching that Booker T biography episode would be saying is, this is a guy that worked really hard. He's been through a lot in his life. He probably wants a good night's sleep.
I think that's been the secret to Booker T's longevity, is having a good night's sleep. Now, I've never been over to Booker's house, but I bet you anything that if you walked into his house and you stripped back the covers of his bed and you stripped back the sheets, and there you would see the greatest mattress in all of modern mankind, a Helix Sleep mattress, because that's the way you get the best sleep, whether you're a multi-time world champion and a former English accent king of the ring, or whether you're just an average schmo. You want to get a good night's sleep. It helps you rejuvenate yourself. It helps you heal yourself. It helps you get relaxed and refreshed and ready for another day of catching all kind of real world shit. But while you're laying in that Helix mattress, as I mentioned, it's like sleeping next to a warm puppy's belly. You
That's
feel
better.
Not inside of
That's
it, but
better.
next to it.
Yeah.
You feel soft, you feel warm, you feel comforted, you feel safe. The Helix Sleep mattress, your worries just fly out of your head, much like birds flying out of Matt Riddle's ass. Folks, all you do is go to helixsleep.com. That's HELIX, helixsleep.com/JCE. And you take their quick 2-minute quiz, talk about your body type and sleep preferences. Want to know whether you sleep on your side or on your back, or you move around, if you like soft or medium or firm. They've got cooling down mattresses, a mattress for plus size folks. Whatever you need that you want to lay on, they got it, besides another human being. That's not included. So if you're looking for a mattress, take the quiz, order the mattress that you're matched up with, and it will come right to your door, shipped for free, never need to go to a store again, and just put it right where you want it, because it's not a big, cumbersome shillelagh. It's in a nice box where you can put it where you want it, open it up, and let it slowly come to life. It's an amazing sight. So go to helixsleep.com/JCE. Take the 2-minute quiz. They'll match you to a customized mattress that'll give you the best sleep of your life, a 10-year warranty. And you can try this thing out for 100 nights risk-free. If you don't love it, I don't know what would be the matter with you, but if you don't love it, they'll even pick it up for you. And right now, Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners at helixsleep.com/JCE. Once again, helixsleep.com/JCE. 2 free, and that way you don't even have to deal with that My Pillow asshole either, and his bags of pencil shavings.